Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Nicole and I'm a medical student studying in Hong Kong. And today this video is going to be slightly different from the videos I usually do. It's the beginning of August and last month I went on a complete reading marathon. So in this video I'll be recapping the books I read and doing a mini book review and ranking the books. I think I read like 7 books in 7 days. So yeah, it was not good for my eyes, but it was nice just getting back into reading. So without further ado, the first book I read was So Over You. It was a pretty quick read and a very short book, but it was a book that kind of kickstarted my reading marathon and got me back into reading. So Over You is a high school romance book. It's about a girl in her senior year and she's on the school's journalism team. She and her enemy and her former boyfriend, who are both on a journalism team, are working together to try save the school newspaper because the school did a lot of budget cuts and the budget for journalism got cut drastically. So one of their ideas was for the girl to go on 12 blind dates in order to write up a newsletter article on the meaning of love for high school students. So it sounds kind of cheesy, it was a bit cliche, and along the way as the girl is going on her 12 blind dates, her ex-boyfriend and arch enemy, who's also on the journalism team, is actually kind of in the background supervising her, making sure that she's okay, which, come on, a girl does not need a guy to make sure she's okay. But the book was good. The ending was a bit out of left field. Like, the ending explains why the two people broke up before senior year. And overall, if you're looking for a realistic high school romance book, this is probably not going to be your cup of tea. The plot wasn't particularly fleshed out, and some parts did not logically make sense. That being said, if you're looking for a cute, short, fluffy romance book to kickstart your reading journey into reading more books, this is an easy book to read. It's a quick read, and I would give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I would give it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I picked up was The Last Time We Say Goodbye. And this book is about a girl named Lexi who's trying to pull herself together and return back to her normal life after her brother commits suicide. It's about survivor guilt, learning to move on, and how to say goodbye without meaning the end. I remember first reading this book when I was in middle school and crying when I was reading it, and also really liking it even though I was crying through the book. Now, 7 years later, I'm revisiting this book on my journey to start reading again because I haven't been reading a lot of books lately. And I cried again when I was reading it on a reread, but I still really like it. And it's kind of ironic how back in middle school I would read a lot of romance or angst kind of books about protagonists who were in high school. And after reading all those books in middle school, I would kind of forget about the plot. And then I went to high school. I didn't read many books in high school. And then now I'm out of high school and I'm rereading all the books I read in middle school in order to kind of re-spark my love for reading. And it really makes me feel that you never read the same book twice, even if you're reading the same book. And the reason why I say this is because every time you reread the book, even if the book is the same, you're a different person. So when you reread a book, you kind of get new insights. And I really think there is merit to rereading old books. So that's something I kind of did during my reading marathon in July. That being said, I think that this book did a really good job describing Lexi's thoughts and her internal responses to people when they were trying to comfort her. For example, a lot of her friends were always like, "I'll be here if you need me," or it's like, "How can I help you?" Because Lexi's going through this survivor guilt and she's mourning for her brother. And Lexi has like this internal monologue where like she says, it's really not very helpful for you to say that, but I can see both sides. Like, you can empathize with Lexi and the grief that she's feeling, but at the same time, I think we all kind of say these things to the people around us when we see them going through hard times, because we really don't know what to do. And the book really shows both sides of the situation, and I think that was part of the book that really made me cry, because it was so relatable and realistic. I really liked the message of the book about moving on and forgiving other people, but also learning to forgive yourself. And as cliche as it sounds, time really heals a lot of wounds. So overall, I would give this book a 5 out of 5. The ending was a bit abrupt, but I think it tied up all the loose ends that needed to be tied up, and if it kept on going for like a happier ending, it would have been a bit too cookie cutter perfect. So ending was good. This book got a 5 out of 5. Right. So next book I read after reading The Last Time They Say Goodbye was the Inheritance Game series. So far there's 2 books that are out. The 3rd book is coming out this month, and I'm kind of looking forward to it because I enjoyed the first 2 books for the most part. Book 1 is called The Inheritance Games, and it was a nice change in genre from Last Time We Say Goodbye, because Last Time We Say Goodbye was kind of like a more saddish book, but Inheritance Games was slightly more action-packed, it was faster paced, and it was a good switch up from the books I was reading. The Inheritance Games is about a girl named Avery who finds out she's inherited basically all of the money from a billionaire called Tobias Hawthorne, and she gets whisked away to the Hawthorne mansion after she finds out that she's the heir of this inheritance, and she meets the other Hawthorne grandsons and the rest of the Hawthorne family who thought they were going to get the inheritance, and they feel like they got cheated out of what they deserved because this girl Avery has never seen or heard of Tobias Hawthorne. She's like, he's a complete stranger, why am I getting all of his money? So the story is about Avery and the 4 grandsons of the dead grandfather, Tobias Hawthorne, trying to solve a riddle that was left by their grandfather before he died. So Tobias left these hints in his will, and eventually they solved the riddle. Spoiler, but not really a spoiler. What do you expect from? There's a bit of romance, somewhat midway through the book. It's not too much romance yet. This isn't a book I would reread like at the moment, but it's a book that I would recommend. It gave me similar vibes to The False Prince in like the way it was written and the genre, and I liked that the book was fast-paced because I hate exposition. I hate slow like exposition that slowly builds up. When I read Way of Kings, that was like pushing the extent of my tolerance for slow exposition. So The Inheritance Games is fast. It's fast-paced. You don't feel like it's a drag. So props to that. I liked the way I felt when I was reading the book because I was feeling excited. It was a page turner. Like I really wanted to keep on reading. It really had me. And it's like a bit like a thriller, but kind of young adult genre. Like that audience, it wasn't adult thriller. It was like young adult thriller. The author also wrote The Naturals, and that was another series that I read back in middle school, and I also really liked The Naturals. So I was happy with what I got from The Inheritance Games. Overall, I give this book a 3.5 out of 5. Would recommend if you like thriller, fast-paced, riddle solving, that kind of stuff. More. The next book I read after The Inheritance Games was book 2, which is called The Hardboard Legacy. And book 2 picks up directly where book 1 ends, which is good. I like that. And it follows a similar plot structure. There is actually a second riddle hidden in the solution of the first riddle. And again, the book follows Avery and the 4 Hawthorne grandsons. And they're working to solve the second riddle. This book was not as good as the first book for a couple of reasons. Number one, the love triangle was a bit too cliche for me. It's like two brothers fall in love with the same girl, and then one of them is like, oh, I want my big brother. Like, it's just, yeah, I didn't really like the love triangle cliche kind of thing. Number two, I felt that the riddle could have been more clever. I think book one's riddle was generally clever, but book two felt like everything was falling into place too easily. Like, they would find one clue, and then it would lead to a second clue, and a third clue, and it just happened too, like, naturally. Like, it just flowed one into another too well. So that I didn't really like, because I felt like it was just too smooth for the characters. It was too easy, in a sense. And they're flying to one place and then flying to another, because they had money, they could afford it. Like, yeah, I just didn't really like that part. So book one was better than book two. Another reason I didn't really like this book as much, besides the love cliche and the riddle part, was that I didn't like how the girl wasn't being very sensible. Like, she was taking these risks and not being logical about things that were happening to her. She wasn't being careful, even though she was in a dangerous situation. And I wish, like, I get the, oh, female protagonist is super daring, but I also wish she was more careful and sensible when she was making decisions. Overall, still kind of would recommend, I guess, like, for the sake of figuring out what happens after the first book, because I like the first book. And I'm still going to read the third book, which is coming out this month, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'm giving this book a 3 out of 5. Previous book was 3.5 out of 5. This one's going to be a 3 out of 5, so just not as good. The next book I read after the Inheritance Game series was All the Bright Places. So this book actually won a Goodreads award in the year that it was released, and it ranked higher than The Last Time They Said Goodbye. This book was also a reread for me, but I kind of forgot the plot because I read it so long ago. So reading this book felt like I was reading it for the first time. The book is about a boy named Theodore Finch and a girl named Violet, who meets on the ledge of the school bell tower because they both are entertaining the idea of committing suicide, basically. And they kind of save each other. And afterwards, they pair up to work on a school project about discovering the natural wonders of their state of Iowa. I think it was Iowa. As they go on these different, like, journeys and have these different experiences discovering kind of natural wonders of their state, they learn more about each other, and they kind of attempt to heal each other, and they become better versions of themselves when they're together, and they fall in love. Spoiler alert. Not really, but yeah. This book is about dealing with depression and moving forwards, and it has a bittersweet ending. There were still some parts of the book that made me teary-eyed, even though it was a reread, because some parts of the book I didn't remember. But in comparison to The Last Time We Say Goodbye, I liked The Last Time We Say Goodbye more than All the Bright Places, for a few reasons. Firstly, I wish the characters were a bit more complex and not just defined by their mental health illness. Like, I understand that for some cases, maybe having depression or having anxiety becomes all-consuming, but I wish the book kind of portrayed stuff outside of that aspect. I wish that the characters were defined by more than just their depression or by their emotions. Number two, this book had a bit of love rescuing someone from their mental illness, and I didn't really sit too well with that. I wish that the book had the concept where they help each other overcome their own demons without it involving a romantic relationship. Like, both Violet and Theo are dealing with their own demons, and love kind of heals one of them in a sense, or falling in love helps one of them. But I wish that this situation didn't always have to involve romantic love. Those are my thoughts. Overall, I would give this book a 3 out of 5. If you're looking for a book about teenage angst, depression, mental health illness, I would recommend The Last Time We Say Goodbye over All the Right Places, but that's just my personal opinion. So the next book I read after this was The Love Hypothesis. This was a change from middle school, high school romance, okay? The Love Hypothesis is about a fake relationship between a Stanford PhD student named Olive and a professor in the, I think, computer science biology department named Adam. And the idea is that Olive is trying to convince her best friend that she's in a relationship. And she does this by kissing the first guy she sees, and turns out to be a professor who's really handsome. But a lot of people also hate him because he's very harsh, and he makes like all of his PhD students cry. The professor agrees to maintain this fake relationship and pretend to be her boyfriend, and over time they kind of fall in love. Overall, this romance was a bit cliche, but I'm like a sucker for cute rom-coms, and this is one of the books that actually made me laugh out loud when I was reading. Like, I can't remember the last time I was laughing out loud as I was reading a book, so props to that. In terms of plot, one thing I didn't like was the descriptions and some of the interactions between Olive and Adam. I wish that the guy was more clear about his emotions and that the girl was slightly better at reading his facial expressions. Like, the book's descriptions of facial expressions were a bit bland. Like, all she notices was Adam's smile twitching upwards. Like, it wasn't even his smile. Like, she notices his lips twitching upwards, and that's like repeated 10,000 times in the books, but that's about it. I wish that the facial expressions were slightly more diverse, and I wish the guy was better at communicating how he felt. The ending was a bit rushed, but I really liked the Uber driver at the very end, so I don't want to spoil too much. But basically, the Uber driver gives advice to Olive about making decisions and dealing with the consequences, like using that as a metric for when you're making decisions. Can I deal with the consequences of making this decision or not making this decision? And I really liked that snippet of the ending. Overall, I would give this a 4 out of 5, and I would recommend this if you're looking for a lighthearted, cute rom-com book to read. Yeah. The next book I read after The Love Hypothesis was The Rape of Nanking. So this was a completely different vibe. It's a lot more serious, but I think this was a really good book. As the title suggests, this book is about the Rape of Nanking, and it's broken up largely into 3 parts. It's about the events leading up to the massacre, the events during the massacre itself, and the atrocities that were committed in the city, and it's also, the 3rd part mentions the aftermath of the Rape of Nanking, like how other countries responded, whether countries condemned it or chose to stay silent, how the Japanese government kind of denied that this all happened. They're like, oh, this is a fabrication. It was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. I say it's heartwarming because the section about the events during the Rape of Nanking is told from multiple perspectives, namely the perspectives of a Japanese soldier and some European and American people who were in the city at the time and chose to stay behind instead of abandoning the city. And these American and European people worked to create a safety zone for the citizens of Nanking, and they tried to protect the people that they could. And it was a very brave thing for them to do. So that part was very heartwarming. But it was also heartbreaking to read about the atrocities that were committed. And it's like, there were some parts of the book where I was reading it, and I just had to put the book down because it was really gruesome, and I just kind of wanted to let everything sink in instead of just letting my eyes fly over the words. Like, the descriptions of how people were killed or tortured, and how women and children were raped, and just like, it was really gruesome, but I still would highly recommend this book, especially if you're Chinese, because I feel like, at least growing up, I didn't really learn about Chinese history, and I think this is a very sad part. And the Rape of Nanking happened during the World War II era, but it was glossed over in the history textbook. I don't even think there was a paragraph about the Rape of Nanking in my AP Euro textbook, in the part that was covering World War II. I think it was like a paragraph or maybe just like a few sentences. So this was a good book. It definitely made me cry, especially towards the very end. And it also extrapolates to a wider view where there are so many atrocities that are committed in the world, but they're not, I don't want to say publicized, but no one really knows about them because there are other overarching political or economic interests that would be endangered if the atrocities were publicized. These atrocities are thus overlooked and they're glossed over in history. And another part of this book that really made me teary-eyed was how inhumane human beings can become based on their circumstance or their environment. Like, it's not necessarily that people are born bad, but because of the environment that they're subjected to, it kind of breeds toward that inhumane behavior. Overall, my blood was boiling when I was reading this book, but it was a good book and I would recommend it. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. So after reading The Rape of Nanking, I needed something happier, more lighthearted, so I decided to pick up one of Mariana Zapata's books. Zapata is known for writing slow burn romance books, and I decided to read From Lukov with Love, which is a slow burn romance about ice skaters because I really like ice skating. In case you don't know, slow burn books are about like a romance that slowly builds up throughout the plot. It's not like an love at first sight book. It's like over time they develop feelings and it slowly builds up until it climaxes at the very end of the book. So those are slow burns, and I like slow burns. I prefer them over the like love at first sight because most of the time I feel like it's not love, it's just lust. But that's that. From Lukov with Love is about two ice skaters, Jasmine and Ivan, who decide to pair up for the upcoming ice skating season to skate pairs. For Jasmine, it's possibly her last chance to try getting a gold medal, and for Ivan, he needs a new partner for the upcoming ice skating season. Jasmine and Ivan are kind of like arch enemies, and this plays a bit on the enemies to lovers trope, but I think it's done generally well. Ivan promises Jasmine that I'll help you find a new partner at the end of this ice skating season, and this will only be for one season. They work together every day, and slowly they develop feelings, and they learn to see eye to eye. I liked that this book didn't have an all-consuming romance, and it also depicts a lot of like mundane things about life beyond just love. Like there are parts about like jesting and banter among siblings during dinner, and there's like different themes about like family. It also talks about the difficulty that many people have trying to balance doing what they love and spending time with the people they love. Like for Jasmine and Ivan, because they're like professional ice skaters, they devote all their time on ice skating, and their families are really supportive of that. But Jasmine especially, she deals with the guilt of missing a lot of milestones of her nieces and her siblings, and she misses out a lot of family experiences. So I really liked that aspect of the book, that it wasn't just a romance book. Overall, this book reminds you that there's a mundane form of love. Like, love isn't always the fireworks and the shebang. There's also some daily activity, mundane things, like your car breaking down, or having dinner with family. So that was a nice part of the book that I really enjoyed. One thing I didn't like was how there were way too many descriptions about the guy's like body or his face, and it just got like a bit too much. Like she was like, "Oh my god, he's so handsome," but I wish like the author toned down a bit on that. Something else was that there was a lot of blinking in the book. Jasmine will blink, and then Ivan blinks, and then they're just like blinking at each other, and that's like their form of communication. It's kind of weird, but it's also kind of cute and it's kind of funny. Overall, I liked how Jasmine was written to show the insecurities she had and how she was vulnerable, and it made the character more realistic and it made her more relatable. Overall, 4 out of 5 stars. So all these books I read on my Kindle. I didn't actually check out the book. I usually read on my Kindle and it's so much more convenient and it's easier for my eyes because I can blow up the font. If I were to rank the books I liked the most during this reading marathon, I think Rape of Nanking and Last Time We Say Goodbye would be like top 2. Under that would be From Lukov with Love, and then Love Hypothesis, and then the Inheritance Game books. And then last would be So Over You. Like, So Over You wasn't exactly a good book, but it was a book that got me started into this entire reading marathon, so it was okay. That's it for today's video. If you liked this style of video of me talking about books, let me know in the comments down below or give this video a like. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!